if I increase the money supply by a factor of 10, the cost of watching streaming YouTube videos is not going up, right? Because it's very low variable cost. But if I increase the money supply by a factor of 10 and there are only 10 houses in your neighborhood, the cost of the house is probably going up. And so here's the big conclusion. In an environment where the money supply is expanding, if you don't have a large asset portfolio, then you can't you can't maintain purchasing power to buy the things you want in the future if those things are assets. And of course, they probably are. You probably want a nice house. You probably want cool things that are scarce. The playing field is tilted in favor of the asset owners against people that work for cash and a salary or generate cash flows. The value of your cash flows is falling at that 24% rate, and the value of your assets is accreting at that 24% rate. And the playing field is tilting in favor of people, in favor of Wall Street against Main Street, if you will. So I think what happens is, first of all, Bitcoin is the solution to the problem because it is the apex property. You can't inflate it away. It's a global monetary network for people that want to store their economic energy for the next 100 years. So it's the solution to the problem. That's why it's exploding in value and in popularity. One way it can go is in an environment where there are no property rights, where you have an authoritarian government and no property rights. They just keep printing money until they collapse the currency. And when Venezuela, Zimbabwe, and when the currency completely collapses, the economy completely breaks down, because if the currency breaks, you can't trade. And you're reduced to basically Stone Age barter, or call it Iron Age barter, a bushel of wheat, for whatever, a ride in my horse and buggy wagon. Capital flows from the weak assets to the strong assets. And as the capital flows, there's a redistribution of power and awareness. And I think the capitalists, Austrian economics, thought leaders would say price discovery has disappeared in the bond market. What that means is you have $100 trillion of bonds and bond type instruments, and they're overvalued because the Federal Reserve is printing money to prop them up and buying the bonds. Price discovery has disappeared. The yields have all gone negative. And that means that no rational person is going to buy a bond. Like, why would you buy a bond that yields 2% interest if the money supply is inflating at 15% a year, and if the purchasing power of everything is falling by 15%? If you hold that bond for 10 years, you'll start with $1 million and end up with $100,000. And if you hold it for 20 years, you'll start with something and end up with nothing. So rational people are not going to buy that weak asset. The capital is going to flow from the weak asset to the stronger assets. But if I hold cash, I certainly will lose money. 100% I'm going to lose money if I hold cash. 100% I'm going to lose money if I buy a bond. And so I should buy either equity as an index, or I should, take a bet, because at least that's rational as opposed to guaranteed to losing everything. So capital migrates, but when you're buying a stock, you're betting on the performance of this company over time. And you got a CEO, you've got the next product release, you've got competitors, you've got what are the regulators going to do? How are they going to tax it? There's a lot of uncertainty and risk. And so what's a better idea? A better idea would be, what if I could just buy digital gold in cyberspace where no one can make any more of the gold? I got 21 million virtual gold coins in cyberspace. They're on a global network. Nobody can make any more. And there's no CEO, no company, and no country to screw it up. And nobody can take this away from me. I can take personal custody of my digital gold. And that's what we call Bitcoin. Why wouldn't I want that? Well, it's perfectly engineered. Like, if God invented a perfect place to store all of your life savings, she would invent Bitcoin. So it's perfect. So why wouldn't I do it? Well, maybe it'll be hacked. We wait 12 years. It hasn't been hacked ever. Maybe it'll be banned. Well, actually, it's property by the IRS and the SEC in the United States. It's not banned. And when all these institutions buy it, it's not banned. It's property. It'll be here for the long term. Well, maybe it'll be copied. Well, it's been copied 10,000 times. Nobody was successful, right? Bitcoin is 100 times bigger than Bitcoin Cash, 200 times bigger than Bitcoin SV. And so the dominant digital network with $1 trillion of money in it, that's probably the bank in cyberspace that we're all going to use. And 120 million other people made the same decision. So I have a problem, which is, where am I going to store my life savings? I have at this point only two choices. I can either put it in the stock market and buy a high-tech company that's going to grow fast. By the way, why do you want to grow big? Why do you buy a high-growing tech company? Because you have to grow faster than the rate at which the currency is weakening. If the currency is expanding at 15% a year, you have to grow at faster than 15% a year, your cash flows. So there's a rational reason to buy big tech or to buy the high flyers, because if they're not going to grow 25% a year, if I keep expanding the money supply by 20% a year, you just do discounted cash flow analysis. You have to discount the cash flows by the rate of money supply expansion. And so common sense is, if I'm growing 0% a year and the money's getting weaker 20% a year, the cash flows aren't worth nothing in 7 years. Okay, so ultimately what's going on here is, you either have to put your money in the stock market and guess on high tech, high growth, and that's a challenge, but you can do it. That's the popular solution. Or the other solution is, I put my money at a bank in cyberspace, the bank of Bitcoin. It's run by incorruptible software, and it offers me a global, affordable, safe, secure savings account for a person that neither has the means or the inclination to run their own hedge fund. And that, in essence, is what Bitcoin is. That's why people are stampeding into Bitcoin at the rate of millions a month. Well, 10 years ago, you didn't have Bitcoin, and the best idea you had was gold. And so if you look at the Weimar Republic, when you have absolute power and they just print the currency and it collapses, the entire regime collapses. And everybody's best idea is, I hoard gold. If you look at Zimbabwe, eventually the economy collapses. If you look at Venezuela, the economy collapses. When you don't have an option, the currency collapses and people are left destitute, and sometimes there's revolution, and yeah, I could make a list of all the bad things that happened in history because the money got debased and the economy collapsed, but I won't. What I'll say is, I will offer an optimistic future. There are two things we have today we didn't have then. One, we have 6 to 7 billion people on the planet with mobile phones. And a mobile phone is a mobile computer in your pocket, and you have them in Africa, and you have them in South America, and you have them in Asia, and you have them in the US and Europe. And the second is, we now have $1 trillion digital monetary network called Bitcoin. Anybody in the world with a mobile phone can download an application, and they can start to take custody of their own money.